Well, hello everyone, and welcome to day number 2 of the EMS Leadership Summit. We are here with our daily debrief. My name is Robbie McHugh.
Hi, I'm Lisa Terrizzi, and I'm so excited to be here again this evening. Such an exciting day of presentations and just amazing opportunities to learn and up-level your leadership ability.
Absolutely, Lisa. I want to first off start out by reminding people, if they're just tuning in, this EMS Leadership Summit this week is our 6th event. We have over close to 40 speakers and 30 different sessions. We have international panels. We've got a communications panel, which we're going to talk about tonight. We've got some expert speakers joining us. We're premiering about 6 sessions a day over the next 5 days, actually the next 4 days. This is day number 2. We've been getting a lot of good comments and feedback from day number 1 session, and I'm just going to put a banner up here. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask our panel, comment below, comment where you're joining in from, where you're tuning in from. We are simulcasting across many different pages, including EMS One by Lexapol. We've got the Fire Rescue TV network, the High Performance EMS page, the EMS Leadership Academy page. So I think collectively a following of about 500,000 followers, and we are simulcasting over Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. So that is a mouthful, but we are excited for all of our partners and for folks to tune in and really just hear from our expert speakers and get some of their questions answered.
And you and I are, self-declared leadership nerds. So getting to spend time talking about leadership and then with the folks who we have coming on in just a few minutes are all of our some of our esteemed speakers from today. It's such a fun way to spend the evening. So I think we should start with thanking our sponsors though, because as we say every night, we just couldn't do this without our sponsors. Um, the opportunity to provide all of this leadership training, these amazing presentations for free. So and then Robbie, you and your team have built this amazing exhibit hall. It's just like if you were at a in-person conference without all the hassle of flying and sleeping in a hotel and all the money you have to spend. You go through the booth number 1 to find how to access the um, all of the presentations, and then each of the booths has wonderful resources that you can just get for free.
Absolutely. We've this week even have we have a virtual lunch and learn. So thanks to our sponsors at Image Trend and the Revenue EMS folks. And we you can visit our emsleadershipsummit.com/exhibit. Click through these virtual exhibitor hall booths, and you can register tomorrow. We have a lunch and learn with Isaac Sobel of Revenue EMS talking about found money, how to recover money from insurance claims that sometimes are just written off the books. And his organization, I believe in the last 5 months, has helped ambulance services recover over $7 million in unexpected revenue. So shout out to Isaac. Lunch is on him tomorrow. So for the first 100 people who register and attend, and that session is almost full. So if you'd like to, if you're interested in lines of income that may fund a new program in your agency or get that piece of equipment or get that training, check out tomorrow's lunch and learn. Friday, we've got a lunch and learn with Image Trend, and we'll just click right over to there, and you can they're going to be talking about beyond documentation, just unlocking the full potential of EPCR data, including all of their systems. And you can even click through to these virtual exhibitor hall booths and check out their different platforms for case studies, visualization of data. So pretty fascinating stuff here in each of these exhibitor booths.
And they're all interactive. Not just logos slapped up there. They're all just wonderful interactive. Some of them have videos, some of them have demos, some of them again have free things that you can either download or free trials for many things. So we really encourage people to tool around in there, see what you see, and use the resources and support our sponsors.
Absolutely. Want to mention the booth we have on resuscitation. So Citizen CPR Foundation, Resuscitation Academies. We have resources up here, including the 6 Minutes to Live video, which is going to be featured this week with an interview of Tom Bouthelay, Bob Davis, and Hillary Gates behind that project. We released a press release today that was picked up with the Associated Press about the 6 Minutes to Live movement and how communities can really do a turnaround if they want to, if they're committed to it, and save more people from sudden cardiac arrest. In that article we released today, the press release, we also featured the 10 steps to improving sudden cardiac arrest survivability from cardiac arrest. So these are actionable things that you could take on as a leader to improve survival in your area, in your town. And pretty staggering statistics of the disparities in survival rates. The national average of less than 9% neurologically intact survival, yet other communities have 50, upwards of 60% survival rates because they're focused on investing in EMS systems. And it's a pretty, I'm pretty excited about more people to watch this video. It's 6 Minutes to Live. It is 12 minutes. It's a short document. And we've got an interview this week with the creators behind that movement. So lots of resources to check out there. But folks, in the comments, wherever you're watching from, we'd love to hear if you've watched any of the summit this week, what you've taken away, what you're excited about.
Yeah, I want to say two quick things. One is, we get a lot of questions around engagement. How do I engage my people? How do I, people are complacent. And it's really interesting to me that the something like the 6 Minutes to Live or the CPR Resuscitation Academy, like those are projects, those are programs that you can fully take on, and people love being a part of something like that that's going to truly impact the community. And I think they're wonderful opportunities to engage your staff, your folks. So engage your community too. And then the other thing I want to say is that we do have speakers joining us in just a few minutes. So if you do have any questions from any of the presentations today, or any pressing questions, challenges that you're facing as a person in EMS, as an EMS leader, please put those questions in the comments, and we will get to as many as we can.
Excellent. And folks, check out the playbook. If you're interested in this week's schedule, emsleadershipsummit.com/playbook. We've included a full schedule for the whole week, a downloadable PDF. We've been updating it. We've got additional exclusive resources from some of our speakers as well. So check out the playbook. We've got the full list of all sessions premiering this week. And we're premiering sessions every day. If you're interested in upgrading to an all access pass, you will get lifetime access to all of this year's speaker sessions for a small fee. And it includes NEMSMA approved CME credits if you're interested in pursuing that professional credential from NEMSMA.
That's great. Just want to remind people there's still time to sign up for free. We have today's sessions. You have until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. You can watch them, and obviously the rest of the week. Or we also have an all access pass option. So as you just mentioned, for the CME credits, but there's lots of ways to participate. So check us out.
Great. Well, Lisa, we'll bring on two of our speakers here. They are today, they were premiered in part of our communications panel. So let's bring on both Mark Tenia and Rob Lawrence. Mark, Rob, welcome to
Good afternoon.
Daily Debrief. Good afternoon.
Great to have you.
Great to have you both here. We had a fascinating conversation with Alexia Jobson out at Remsa Health, and it was great to have the comms panel back together again, and sharing with people the power of associations and national associations.
I think it's good. Mark, Alexia, and I love getting the band and the team back together, and we go out, as you two know, we go out all over the place at any conference to either deliver it as a pre-conference session or as a main conference session. And so we're, proponents of communication. And again, it's a pleasure. I don't know, Mark, how many times we've been back now, but I think we've been with you, Robbie and Lisa, most of the way.
Most of the way, absolutely. And Mark from day one with our talking about really helping agencies tell their story, connecting with those local media outlets. and just building that goodwill and that capital. So yeah, we certainly appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and Rob, your experience from the national level to the state association level is also a great resource. I know in our kickoff, our celebration, we talked briefly about the EMS Intel project.
Yep.
Maybe you could say a couple words about that as well.
Yes, I did. So for those that joined with Alexia and I, and Mark's in today, we talked about one of the things that we're doing, which is collecting, collating, and curating national bits of EMS news to enable you folk out there to brief your local elected officials, to enable you to brief your local news outlets. One of the things we see across the EMS space on a daily basis is one local market saying we have the worst of this, that, or the other. And actually, we then come in and say, look, no, it's a systemic issue that's happening across the piece, and therefore, it's not just your local market, and therefore you should just, possibly cut them some slack. Definitely give them some more funding. And so emsintel.org is the site address. It's collected, collated, searchable to help you tell your story in your market using national news sources in the same sort of category, if you like.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Mark, maybe you could share a little bit about how would people submit stories if they're working with their local media outlets and a story gets picked up. What are you seeing as the biggest, points of leverage for sharing that story? How might they share it with the national associations or EMS Intel?
Yeah, I mean, and we mentioned this during the session, this is all about relationship building. And so you've got to build that relationship with your local media, and you've got to build relationships with your national organizations, your state organizations. And having those relationships are going to be incredibly beneficial as you are trying to get stories out there, as you're trying to advocate for your agency or advocate for EMS. One of the benefits of having that relationship with reporters is being able to call them up when you need something and having them pick up the phone. Part of the difficulty of trying to get a story in the news is, sometimes pitching a story and not getting any response whatsoever. And to get that response is to really try to meet those organizations halfway and figure out what is important to them. Every outlet is different. Every medium is different. Some things that may be important to television, print may not care about. Some things that are important to print, television may not care about. And then within those mediums, each of those outlets have different things that are personally important to them. Once you figure out the things that are important to them, once they realize that you really want to meet them and get them what they need in terms of the things that their viewers or their readers want to see, then you can have a better idea of what you should pitch to those outlets. And then once you've done that, you can learn how to leverage some of the state information or some of the national information that you get from those organizations that you're a part of to tell more of the story. A lot of the things that we've done in the past few years in advocating for our agency is also showing them some national data. It's been very helpful to show them that some of the issues or challenges that we've faced in our agency are things that a lot of agencies across the country are going through. And so when we've had those conversations, it's been incredibly important to give them that data and those stats and share, just like Rob was saying, the emsintel.org. Those are invaluable for reporters. It just arms them with more information, because a lot of times, let's be honest, our communities feel like it's just happening here. And they don't realize that these are national issues and that everyone's contending with. And so it's important to be able to tell that story and have all that information just helps you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The American Ambulance Association also supports the annual ambulance turnover study, which is happening right now. Scott Moore talked a little bit about that last night on our live session. And it's another, I don't want to call it a great statistic. It's a great resource. It's a horrible statistic, but it shows that the cost of direct turnover is more than doubled, and it's probably more accurate now than it's been in the past. And across the country, agencies have seen up to, I think, 38% turnover rates.
And again, like this leadership session, that particular report is now maturing. And so the data there becomes exceptionally valuable, and is used in many ways. And of course, in our news outlets and our news tracking, of course, we see the effect of the inability to recruit, the inability to retain. And it's a cyclical issue that no people equals no response equals no transport, no money, and so on it goes on. And so that it's all interconnected. And it's one of the things that I also just wanted to mention, of course, that those relationships that Mark talked about with your local news, reporters, you stay with those folk. And actually, I know Mark can name drop, and so can I, and both of us from the Richmond market originally, folk that have gone on to, to big sort of grown up national outlet reporter positions, and so you sort of track them through their careers as well. And one day, my colleague Laura Geller, I'll name drop, I quite often will talk to her, she's now a national producer for a national outlet. So those people, those relationships, that network you form will stay with you, even if they move on from the news market.
Certainly a great resource, especially a great leadership skill, is relationship building.
Right.
Good point, Rob.
I was just going to say that, Robbie, that the parallel with how to be a great leader, right, is to build that relationship, look and see, what is, how can I be of service to the people I lead, right? And so you come, to a reporter or to a news agency with, why is this important to them? Why is this important to the community? Like, you're providing a service to that news service, right? And rather than what's the news service going to do for me? And when leaders approach their employees or their staff or anyone, volunteers, from you're here to do something for me, it doesn't form a good relationship, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Rob, could you mention now you are the president of Aim High, yet another association? Maybe give folks a little bit of information too about how that
certainly. Well,
benchmarking.
Mark Alexia and I sort of interlock and overlap in every which way, right? So we're all members of the American Association Communication Committee, which is where we sort of have our sort of team sessions in. The Academy of International Mobile Healthcare Integration is an organization that I'm the president of which Mark and Alexia are also members. So we're all kind of, as I say, connected there. And we are an organization that look at high performance, high value EMS. And one of the things that we've done over the last 2 years, in the same way that Scott Moore and his team have looked at recruiting and retention, we have done some fairly extensive cost surveys. This is before the sort of federal cost collection survey, to look at how much it actually costs to deliver effective EMS. That thing that we always talk about and sometimes forget, which of course is the cost of readiness. It's not just about being available for that. We need 24 hours to be available for that 10 minutes for the patient's emergency. And if you sort of think about it in that way, then of course there is a cost to doing that, and it's a cost that we have to represent. That's one area. Coming up, actually, if I can quickly plug something that's happening next week, Robbie and Lisa, we have a webinar where we are examining international models of EMS. And so we have Jason Killens, who is the chair of the UK Association of Ambulance Chief Executives. We have Kevin Smith, who is the chair of the Canadian Paramedics Association, Paramedics Canada, and also Adam Hines from REMSA, from Alexia's shop, talking about international models. And of course, one of the things that we mustn't be so arrogant to realize that we have all the answers, because I think we all know we don't. Mm-hmm. And therefore, by having that international collective and collaborative, allows us then to share best practice and share ideas. Some of those things national models of EMS are different, but the ideas within it can be adopted and adapted by each individual countries, and that's very much the basis of what we do.
That
was a big part of the. I'm sorry. It was a big part of the conversation last night was about how, learning from others, reaching out to other people, and the associations are such an amazing resource for that, to be able to say, hey, we're both part of this association, and what are you doing? And could you say again when that is going to be?
Yep, it's next Tuesday. I will put something in your chat, in our individual chat, and then you can share that. But it's a free webinar. I know that folk, for example, the World Health Organization are going to join in and pay attention to that, because again, there's information there for free to share, to be, as I say, adopted, adapted, and used. And so we're delighted to particularly bring that session to anyone that wants to join us.
I'd love to be there.
If I can give a quick plug, we're also have award nominations that are open right now.
Yes.
So We have a bunch of different categories. Some of them for EMS organizations, some of them for local leaders, some of them for organizations that support EMS. It's just one of the ways that we try and recognize the good work that's happening within the industry, as well as the folks that are doing a great job advocating on our behalf. So anyone that's interested can go to the website. We would love to get some submissions. And we've been giving these awards out annually, and they've been great at promoting people that are doing great things.
Excellent. And
That's
that is on the
wonderful.
aimhigh.mobi website, correct?
Indeed, aimhigh.mobi. I know you've got John Washko coming up, but the background to that is when we were seeking a new name for an old organization, Matt Zavadsky and I we had the post-it notes out looking at what the best acronym that was most memorable, and John was on the computer working out the best website, and we discovered there is indeed a .mobi, and there it is. So that goes to Washko.
Very appropriate for mobile integrated medicine.
Exactly.
In agencies. So, Rob, Mark, thanks for joining here on the Daily Debrief. Any final words that you have for our leaders that may be watching? What should they be doing when it comes to their associations, their agencies?
Well, as I think we've said in the session, we are all politicians. We're all driving around in billboards that are called ambulances. We are all masters of our own PR, and we should use that to the best effect possible in order to get our people recognized, get the work that we do recognized, and really fire home the point that it's not transport, it's about the treatment that we give. And those are some key messages. And certainly the American Ambulance Association are currently going through a work group to reinforce and publicize again these points. But individually, please be proud of what you do and tell folk what you do, because it's very noble.
Yeah, just to echo what Rob is saying, don't be afraid to be proactive, to reach out. In EMS, we're often waiting for the phone call before we respond to the call. When you're doing public relations, when you're doing communications, you got to be proactive. You can't wait for things to happen. You've got to make things happen. You should be driving the bus. And there's a difference between being proactive and aggressive. And I think sometimes we in EMS might be afraid of being proactive because we feel it's aggressive. But there's nothing wrong with being proactive. And it's a great benefit to not just your organization, but EMS as a whole, if you are really going out there to deliver your message. And we love to be humble, but there's nothing wrong with tooting your own horn. There's nothing wrong with promoting the good work that you do. And you need to do that because it really is a detriment if we're not sharing the incredible stories of our folks.
Yeah, toot your own horn, but reduce the red lights. There we go. Boom.
Excellent points, both Mark and Rob. Thanks for joining us here live, folks. Today is day number 2. Check out the session with Alexia Jobson as well, and the PR and comms panel, and the power of associations and leveraging your stories. Rob, Mark, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, always fantastic to have such great leaders in our industry be with us, taking questions, just being willing to help out, and the amount of different hats they're wearing that are all like, everything's moving in the same direction too. It's great to see some of these national stories, these national trends, and being told by such great professionals.
And it's so amazing too, with each one of these that I've been watching, the ones that I wasn't participating in, but was watching, it's like the title says something, but there's so much more in that particular, in every one of them, but in that one in particular, there's so much to glean from their session. It was really very powerful, I thought. So I really encourage people to jump on in all of those set presentations and not look at the title and think, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Every single one of these I've been learning something from, and I can almost guarantee you will too. So we'll make sure to post the link to the international session somewhere, so that folks who might want to be a part of that webinar. So we do have a couple other speakers we'd love to bring on to talk about other aspects of leadership, and maybe answer some of the questions that we've been getting. Again, to the audience, if you have any questions, please put it in the comments, and also tell us where you're listening from. This is an international conference. We've been getting folks registering from all over the world, so we would love to hear from you, where you're joining from.
Absolutely. Lisa, let's just remind people they can check out our sessions that are live today, day number 2 sessions, by going to emsleadershipsummit.com/exhibit. They'll be able to click on booth number 1 if you haven't already registered for that free pass, and you'll be able to see all of these sessions. 2 of our speakers coming right up, Dr. David Daniels, returning speaker, and a new speaker, Carmen Theobald, both with some very compelling stories that our agency leaders can learn from. But let's go ahead and bring them in. So first of all, Dr. David Daniels, welcome back.
Our OG.
Proud to be here.
Back again. And welcome Carmen. Thanks for joining us again. I know you both joined us on the celebration kickoff, and thanks for coming back for day number 2.
Such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, we've got a few questions that Lisa's going to tee up here that we've been getting. Our participants are asking some questions and watching different sessions. But before we do that, maybe Lisa, if you want to pick out some questions to ask, David, can you give people an overview of what they should expect with your interview? And I know we've talked about psychological safety, physical safety, psychological hazards, and you're coming out with a book next week on the topic.
Yeah, Robbie, I again, it's always an honor to be able to join the proceedings and talk a little bit about how the areas that I talk about from a psychological health and safety perspective actually apply in EMS. They apply everywhere. And I was listening to the communications panel and some of the things that they were talking about, this effort to go out and try to convince the general public about the resources that you need. And sometimes not getting them is in and of itself a hazard to the people in the business, because there's this kind of unrealistic expectation that, well, if I don't get that, I can't do my job. And what's going to happen if someone dies? What's going to happen if something doesn't work out? Well, it's my fault. And a lot of that comes around, a lot of those concerns come from, again, an unrealistic expectation about what the job really is. You're not a miracle worker. Some people that you see will not live. They will not survive. But folks aren't told that. They're told, they grow up seeing this stuff on TV where it all ends up fine at the end of the hour, the 30 minutes, and they come in with this idea, and then they go through training. They're told more stuff that's not necessarily all totally accurate, because we sometimes try to shield people from what the job really is. It is really difficult to see people lose their lives. It is really difficult to see, situations that you cannot solve. But that's not you. In many cases, those are decisions. That's a risk management decision that a community has made. You can give a community as much service as they're willing to invest. And you should not feel like you have to make it up. Our ambulance is too far away, so I have to drive faster. No, you don't. Because if you don't get there at all, you've simply made situations worse. So these are some things that people sometimes don't make the connection. It is a noble profession. It is a wonderful aspiration to want to help other people, but it doesn't help other people when you're harming yourself in the process.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So well said. I mean, we could literally spend a few hours just talking about that. So we are going to get to a question in a moment, but Carmen, I'd love to give you a chance to sort of give people an overview of the conversation you and I had, which I got the privilege of interviewing both of you for your presentations. And if you could share a little bit about that, that would be great. And then I do have several questions for us to answer. We'll get to as much as we can.
Sure. Well, I had the privilege and pleasure of speaking with you, Lisa, really about courage. I think if we're going to really narrow it down, the courage it takes to be able to change the systems that are causing harm. The organizations are doing amazing work in some regard. The individuals are doing incredible work, and the systems that are supporting it really are hurting a lot of people. And so, as a coach and facilitator, and I do a lot of trauma recovery work with a lot of different therapists with our horses. So we have a bit of a horse-inspired approach, both in the things we talk about, you and I, Lisa, as well as the work we do. The number one thing we hear from our clients, and that I also hear when I go in to do different leadership and team building trainings, is around sanctuary trauma. It's around the organizational trauma. And when we consider that 94% of fire departments and 86% of EMS departments are struggling with staffing because of mental health related challenges, and then we consider that the number one thing people come and talk about is how they felt like the place that was supposed to keep them safe, the place that they were supposed to be able to come back to from the hard call, is actually the place that wounded them the most. We really need to start to think differently about the systems that are our amazing first responders. So what does that mean? We need courage in order to change that. We also need to have a lot of, I would say, grace in how we move through the different challenges, but not losing track of the fact that we actually need the change and we need to learn how to come together. So that's where some of the horse-inspired language can come in, of like, how can we come together as the power of the herd, if you will, for a healthy, good purpose, for this purpose of really collectively shifting what needs to be shifted.
Yeah, it's really great. And for sure, systems have been a huge theme this year in this conference, as it should be. And maybe it's been in other conferences. I'm sure it has, because Robbie and I have been talking about systems for many years. But last night, Nick Carson was even talking about how the individuals are trying to make up for the systemic issues, right? And that's where you get so much harm. And it's, I think, innocent people are like you said, David, and we've all said these are amazing humans trying to do a really tough job without oftentimes the support that's necessary. And so and that's really the frame for me for some of these questions. So one of the questions we had was, how do you hold people accountable without causing upset, right? Or without, risking them, maybe leaving the organization or taking it the wrong way. And I think when you come from a systems approach, it's a different thing than if you come at it from an individual. Yeah.
Right.
Carmen, what do you think? And then David, I'd love to hear what you think too.
Yeah, I'm going to relate this to horses for a moment, because I think that this is actually really connected to what it takes to learn how to work with a horse effectively. It's the same kind of skills to work with a person. And that has a lot to do with being able to embody this paradox of being really strong and really vulnerable at the same time. So when we have to hold someone accountable, we need to really be in our healthy empowerment about the things that need to be talked about. If we're kind of wishy-washy about it, if we're kind of hiding behind, too soft, it's not going to be clear enough, and it's actually going to cause more stress and more anxiety. At the same time, we also need to keep our heart open, and that's where we really need to be shifting out of the individual fault and really holding the individual as a wonderful being who's doing their best, who needs guidance and shifting to get back on track. Even if they've made a grave error, we don't ever have to see the person as being wrong, just the behavior. So how can we show up in those conversations truly willing, able, and wanting to connect, while still being able to be very much in our position of having to direct in a healthy way?
That's great. David, what would you like to say about that?
Yeah, and first of all, let me mention, I sent Carmen a note earlier about her discussion about sanctuary harm and how impactful that was to me personally. As a matter of fact, if you read my book, you're going to find it. She's now giving me the language to discuss the first 4 chapters of my book, because and this is how it connects to this question. Many of the systems that are quote unquote supposed to be about accountability are ridiculous. They're ridiculous because they were made by one person or one group of people sitting in their office. And in some cases, it's not that they themselves, it didn't work for them. It just doesn't work for everybody else. And so we set these systems up. They are too homogeneous in their design. They are not, and they don't change enough. I mean, we wrote a rule because someone did something inappropriate, inadequate, or ineffective 20 years ago, and we still have the same rule. But everything else has changed. The people have changed. As a matter of fact, we all complain about how horrible that rule is, but nobody will change it, to include the leaders. And this is where that whole issue about courage comes up. As a matter of fact, I think every organization should look at itself at least once a year and ask itself, what are we this year? And what are we going to be for next year? And if that means rewriting every single rule or throwing some of them out, that's fine. The question is, can we accomplish whatever it is we're here to accomplish? And if we're here to give quality pre-hospital healthcare to people, we don't do it the same way in 2025 that we did in 1975. So you shouldn't be. So why is it that we have the same rules, the same protocols, the same bureaucratic processes, and people are going to be held accountable? They're held accountable because they showed up 3 minutes tardy for work when they probably should have been not viewed as an hourly worker in the first place. If you treat them as exempt, then you don't have to, have them punching a clock like we're in a manufacturing facility someplace. So my concern is not with accountability on the person, but systems that help us accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. Nobody's going to shoot holes in a boat that they actually are in, certainly not one that they built.
Yeah, it's really so good.
I love that idea of just being able to come together and question what we've been doing. Why has this policy been in existence? Or even just explaining more of the context of why this policy was created and why it's designed, hopefully, with the intention to protect people, not to just insulate the organization from liability. It's like, how do we protect our patients? How do we protect our people? And then how do we ensure our organization is set up to be sustainable? Last night was discussed. I mean, the trauma people are taking on by making up for the lack of support from their elected officials and budgetary support is just staggering.
Yeah. And I want to rearrange that order because I can't help myself. It is first, you have to take care of the people that are closest to you. If you can't do that, don't tell me how you're trying to take care of the public, because you can't. We practice taking care when we first take care of ourselves and we take care of the folks closest to us. And then we together we go and provide service to other people.
Yeah. It reminds me of an interview from our very first EMS Leadership Summit. The CEO of a bank, Tom O'Malley, Pioneer Bank, changing a 100-year-old bank culture, telling this board of directors that he was going to prioritize not the customer first, but the employees first. Because if the employees felt protected, if they felt taken care of, they were in turn going to take care of the public. And lo and behold, he has a waiting line for entry-level teller positions around the building every time a spot goes out. So if you're telling us it can't work, it has worked in other places. Sure.
And it's a bank. I mean,
right.
I'm nothing wrong. He's a great guy, by the way, and it's a great bank.
But even he says it's banking.
Right.
Yeah, but he says if you call at any point, if you ask them what they're doing, they say, I'm creating a world-class organization. Like that's who they are. That's who they are at their core. And that's from starting with the employee, as Robbie said.
Can I add something also? And
Of
just
course.
really, I love, David, what you said around holding the systems accountable. When I think about holding individuals accountable, I'm really thinking about like educating, like the way that we educate each other to do a good job and how to come together as a team. That's about education in so many ways. That completely changes the energy. And I think when we really show up, like I was saying, in our heart around being willing to see the other person when they have a response, even if maybe we think that the system that we're trying to hold them quote accountable to it makes sense. Maybe if we're really leaning into that human moment and they have a response that we actually hear because we are really truly feeling them as a human being, then we start to see exactly what David is talking about as what are the ways we can actually collectively hold the system accountable so that there's more space for the human.
Yeah, so good. Wow.
And this is a
D-
universal issue. This is not just EMS in the United States and
No.
Canada and the UK. Duncan's even saying, the culture is equally the same in Australia and the other parts of the world that he's worked in. So universal issues doesn't mean that there aren't more solutions that we just haven't uncovered yet, or that we haven't tuned into and listened to. David, you've spoken before about other countries putting worker protections in for these psychosocial hazards of the workplace.
Yes. There are 40 of them. There was a study done recently by I can't remember the name of the international group that looked at worker protections for about 40 countries of, I think, 40 of the largest economies, and unfortunately, the United States is at the very bottom of the list. I mean, this system was not designed to care for human beings. It was designed to either make money or produce things. It just wasn't. So I think it's important that we simply recognize that and not simply try to do the same things over and over and over again, because they weren't designed to care for people. They weren't designed to make sure that folks felt better. They were designed to, get something accomplished. But interestingly, as you focus on human beings, you get the very thing that you're looking for. You get more of it because, again, I'm willing to participate in that. If you're not going to harm me and we're both going to make a little money or feel a little bit better, why wouldn't I want to do that? And last thing I want to say is, Robbie, you mentioned this issue about challenging. So in the book, the 4 stages of psychological safety, the highest level of organizational psychological safety is when you can challenge the system. That's where you get innovation. That's where things get better. That's where, we get some of our greatest and most wonderful outcomes, is when we can challenge what's going on and simply not feel like I'm a robot that has to simply go along with the system.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point because, I think it was in your session, David, we talked about how, when people feel safe to challenge, that's when you get the best work out of people. I don't mean best like forcing them, but like people feel safe. They feel like they want to contribute, this engagement, and they don't need to be quote unquote held accountable because they're all part of the same system that's a living, breathing, dynamic thing, as opposed to, I'm a worker bee, or I'm, and again, nothing against doing the work and all of that, but it's really the culture of the organization, this living, breathing, dynamic thing that can be ever changing. And, I've heard in many organizations that I've gone in, EMS and non-EMS, where people say, oh, you're pie in the sky, this can't change. And it's just not true. That's a lazy, in my opinion,
It's a cop
out. This is a cop out. Like,
Yeah.
I can change. And as Duncan said, I am part of the system. And if I can change and I'm part of a system, then the system has to change. It can't not change. If you as an employee or you as a person as part of the system, once you change, the system has to change. It's the nature of it.
Yeah. And leaders making those kind of statements those are the voices of traumatized leaders. That's why they say that.
Yeah.
They're traumatized themselves and haven't taken the time. They haven't gone up to hang out with horses or do something because they are so traumatized themselves. Unrealistic expectation. They want me to do response time with no money and got to train people with no budget and all this type of thing. And they're traumatizing themselves and they pass that trauma on to other people. And so again, it starts with me. I have to know what triggers me, what's important to me, what works for me. And then the folks around me, we have to be having that conversation every day about how do we do this in a way that's safe for all of us.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
People bringing their best selves, allowing people to show up and be engaged,
Right.
rather than just punching the clock. I mean, and that is solely on the organization and the leaders for the culture that's been created. And David, you're spot on there that most leaders are probably very traumatized by their years of bad experiences and being kept in the box of, well, that's how it's always been. And, they can't even think outside of imagining what could be. We see it all the time.
Yeah. And I loved, Carmen, how you said accountability as education is an opportunity. Like when you build that kind of accountability, it's not a discipline or a way to traumatize people. Like you did this wrong, but really a learning opportunity, and where, people do their best work, wouldn't you say, when they feel that they're being supported and educated so that they can do better.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much science to back up that we actually cannot learn properly or well at all if we are in a state of protection in our nervous system, if we don't feel safe. So if we are sliding down the nervous system ladder, so to speak, and going into that fight, flight, fawn, freeze mode, which is so often what we get into, especially when we're facing leadership that doesn't have psychological safety, especially when we're facing systems that are really, truly unsafe, we are operating with a lot of adrenaline. We are operating with parts of our nervous system that are shutting down to prioritize finding a survival mode. And that shuts off parts of our brain. So we literally cannot work or think or learn well when we are not feeling safe. So it's not just about this, like, let's have this soft approach and have all this like woo-woo, whatever. No, this is really backed up by science that we literally cannot do a good job unless we truly feel safe. We can manage, we can push through. That's why, first responders are truly some of the most resilient people, but we don't have to be that resilient. And I think we would see so much less people off on leave and, experiencing stresses and burnout and having really significant mental health struggles and suicides, where that would be preventable with organizations that really prioritized psychological and emotional safety. And actually, there's more research that shows that organizations that are implementing trauma-informed care practices have really significant improvements in all of the fields that the organizations also complain about. So it all goes hand in hand. It's just, again, back to the courage. Are we willing, as both individuals and collectively, and especially as the system, to really have a hard look at the things that are making people feel, frankly, just unsafe? And how can we still do great care, still get the job done? That doesn't have to be sacrificed, but we can do it while actually caring about each other.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, even I'm just thinking, like, reading the chat here and kind of, these kind of buzzwords like accountability, right? Like, I'm not even gonna, that means a certain thing, as opposed to being like, well, what about another way of looking at it? Like, what about a way to use it in a way that supports people? David, it looks like you want to say something.
No, I'm just responding. Again, these systems in many cases were set up by traumatized people. They were set up by folks who were under stress and under threat themselves at the time that they created them. And we don't allow these systems to evolve. We simply, again, it's like we're paying homage to dead people all the time. This guy, somebody started this. They lay out the research. Well, there's a research study done in 1973 that said so and so and such and such. And you're talking to people who weren't even born then. And so it is no disrespect if we simply take the direction that someone else set up, but we have to do that differently for different people in different times. That's all. I'm just not into doing things because they were always done that way, because it doesn't work that way. It's not effective now. If you have a rule, if you have a process or a procedure that doesn't help you today accomplish that goal, then maybe you might want to try something new. Perhaps.
Yeah. And I think, organizations go through an evolution as well, right? Like you were saying. So, um, to like I say this to startup, when I work with startups all the time, it's like, you can't run an organization that's been around 10 years like a startup. You can't have that same mentality. And it's the same thing. If you're coming from survival all the time, or like you said, paying homage to the past all the time without question, then you're not evolving. And I know you've said on many occasions that you don't evolve, you become extinct.
That's right.
And we're seeing that, unfortunately, in many communities where, we just saw it not too far from where Robbie and I live, where another organization, excuse the expression, bites the dust. And it's like
Right.
preventable, predictable.
Right.
You can't keep doing what doesn't work and keep wanting to do more. So,
And 10, not just one organization, In the last 10 years, 10% of the organizations in New York State have bit the dust.
Wow.
Mhm.
A
Wow.
symptom of a much bigger problem and usually a lack of investment, a lack of innovation at the local level, unfortunately. So this is why I'm excited to give people like yourselves here to talk about there is another opportunity. There is another way,
There is.
folks. And I really hope you'll listen. I hope you'll tune in. Just be open-minded. Listen to some of these sessions that we've been premiering every day. And there's opportunity here to build a better future, co-create it with other people. Get their buy-in if they have a say in that creation of the future. It's the work that Lisa and I love to do with organizations. We love to do it in our live trainings when we get people from around the world together live on the same page, and just to discover, what's possible if they weren't so dependent on the past, if they weren't driving like they were looking through the rear view mirror all the time.
Right. Yeah. I want to mention. So there was this mention of engagement earlier. So Dr. Bill Kahn talks about these tiers or dimensions of engagement. And sometimes people are satisfied when they get physical engagement. It's good people showed up, but there's another level. The next level is cognitive engagement. I'm here and I know why I'm here. I know what the rules, I'm actually bought into the rules. But the question is, can we get emotional engagement? That's hard. I'm not saying it is hard, is a hard thing to do because we are so different. It is hard to do. But once you can crack that one in and get the holy grail of emotion, people are bought in emotionally. I'm here because I'm a part of this. I'm here because I feel good I feel safe being here. You would not believe the kind of innovation and the kinds of things you can get done, but you don't engage people by simply getting their bodies in the room and yelling at them. That doesn't get you anything other than resistance, and you get people leaving, and leaving cost American businesses $1 trillion a year. Do we want to save the $1 trillion or not?
Yeah. And I just want to mention one of the other speakers who couldn't be with us, Eric Chase's presentation about, I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but it really had to do with the learning being absent from leadership for so, seemingly, like where people are coming in as if they know how to lead. I already know, I know what's worked in the past, so I'm leading with that mindset, as opposed to really embracing this whole idea of learning, and not just being a learning organization, but being a learning human being, because we're designed to learn, right? We've evolved to learn. Learning is natural for us. We have to work hard not to learn. and it's almost impossible, but we seem to do it, right? Where we just put up walls, or we already know what this means. We already know what the right way is. I mean, we're living in the US right now in a situation where that's everywhere, right? It's all we already know, versus what can I learn here? And as Bell Montez's presentation too, he talks about the power of learning, and as opposed to the power of telling, right? And he talks about grace in leadership and not accountability, authenticity, and every one of the sessions is touching on what we're talking about. But it's this willingness to be a leader who learns, and not being a leader who thinks they know everything already. And we all have it to some degree. I mean, I have it in saying what I'm saying right now. That's the sort of the paradox of it all. But the more willing we are to be curious and learn, and to, even those things that we're so freaking sure are true, right? Like we're like take to the bank, we're so sure they're true. Like, how about those? Can we question those?
And do I have time to share a quick little piece on this
Of
as well?
course.
So I'm going to share a little horse study that it's going to seem unrelated, but it's completely related. So they took these two groups of horses and they trained them using two different methods. One was using negative reinforcement and one was using positive reinforcement. So the negative reinforcement, it wasn't overtly abusive or anything, but they were correcting with a little bit more strictness and harshness when the horses weren't doing what they wanted them to do, to then, quote, train them to learn what they wanted them to learn. The other group, they didn't totally ignore them if they didn't do what they wanted. They made sure that they had like parameters and boundaries to keep them safe, the humans and the horses, but they didn't really put that much focus on the things they didn't want. They just really, really highly rewarded the things that they did want. Then they took these horses, they didn't do those same exercises for, I think it was 10 years. And they brought those same two groups of horses back and did those same kind of exercises and training methods. The one group that used the negative reinforcement, it's as if they didn't ever learn it before. It was like they're starting from scratch in the learning. The group of horses that they did with a positive reinforcement, it's as if they did everything yesterday. So what I would add to that, and this is not in the study, but this is what I see with people, this is what I see in my own experience with horses and humans and all beings, is that we're actually always learning. Both groups of horses learned. It's just that one group learned what the people wanted them to learn, and one group learned to be worried about the people. So are we teaching each other to be concerned and learn how to be concerned about each other? Or are we helping each other feel safe enough to learn the things that we actually all want to do together?
I felt that one.
My favorite session of the day was hers. I guys got to tell you, there's no question. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
I so appreciate that story. I appreciate, Carmen, your commitment to helping first responders. And if you could share a little bit, just where can people find you? What the work that you do with the first responder community in Canada?
Yeah, so our website is horsesensenorth.com. We do online trainings as well as in person. Of course, the in-person is great because the horses are actually here. But then I also go into organizations, whether it's in person flying there or traveling there or online, to do kind of some horse sense, if you will. So a little bit of what we're doing here, but really through some structured frameworks and learning models for leadership training and wellness and this and that. So you can learn all about what we do on our website, Horse Sense North. I'm also on, Instagram and Facebook and those kinds of things too.
Well, thank you, Carmen. And David, tell people a little bit about your book that's coming out and what they should be looking forward to.
Well, actually, officially a week from today, it'll be available to everyone. There are some copies floating around right now for folks who actually pre-bought, so to speak. So I'm really happy with it. Really happy with it. And again, I really appreciate, having the opportunity to hang out with you all, because there are some themes that over the years I've picked up actually here in the summit that are kind of interwoven. If you read through, you're going to see some of them. So they aren't totally created from scratch. But again, you should be able to go out on, your wherever you get your books, particularly on Amazon, next Wednesday. It should be available, and hopefully folks will take their opportunity to pick it up. The other thing too, I want to mention, Carmen, that my first international launch event will be in Toronto, Canada, on the 28th of May. So please look out for that.
I will try.
Yeah,
Thank you for telling me.
Absolutely.
Great.
Carmen, and David, we will send Wendy there too, and let her know.
Please.
And maybe Laura Klusterman, who's also from Canada.
Absolutely.
She's one of our
They're both
speakers.
friends. They're both friends. I'll have to find a way to drag the three of us down together.
And are you coming to New York? Because we'd like to see you too. We've known you all these years. We've never met in person.
Well, we're going to have to figure out a way to do that. I have actually 2 international events that those are scheduled and the local ones aren't. So, and again, the issue is that in Canada and in Australia, they get this concept already. And the reason why I titled the book what I did is I'm trying to convince people here in the US, this is a thing. It's a thing. It's real. It's not, it's not magic. It's not voodoo. It's real. And it actually could be very helpful to us.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you both for attending our daily debrief. Thank you for putting these sessions together, your commitment to this community and the work that you're doing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
It's
both.
an amazing summit. The work you both do it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we could do it without y'all. So thank you so much.
Would miss it.
All right, folks, we will see you around. And for folks that are still watching, Lisa, we've got some other comments that have been popping up that we wanted to get to as well. You and I can answer some of those if that works. And
Yeah, I've seen a theme in here about certainly including citizens. I think all stakeholders need to be part of these conversations for sure. And I think often when these and I do this at all kinds of businesses, helping people find stakeholders that agree with you and don't agree with you, right? People who see what works and what doesn't work, and to create a safe place for for people to have these conversations. That doesn't mean everybody's going to walk away getting what they want, but everyone's going to have a sense of they were heard and considered. That's where this inclusivity is so important. Yesterday in Chief of Bureau Gilchrist's presentation, she talked about how they made a concerted effort to go out into communities that were underserved, or maybe the response times were lower, and really making an effort to find out what were the barriers and how can we remove them. But I think what's crucial to these things, and as a facilitator for 30 plus years now, I find that really is what's so important, and I know you feel the same way, Robbie, is even having our opinions, it's important to come with a willingness to listen, and a willingness to be curious. And so I think citizens and other stakeholders get invited a lot more of the time when everyone's clear that we're all on the same page and we all want to make things better.
That's great. That joint sense of purpose. It's, yes, we can disagree about a lot of stuff. It's so easy to quickly figure out what we're going to disagree about, but let's talk about what we can agree on. Let's talk about our joint purpose, our commitment to what's important and what matters. And when it comes from the citizens and we're able to have those open, honest conversations in a forum, I think it's such a unique opportunity for elected officials to also hear those messages, right? They are the ones making these decisions. They are the ones setting these budgets. And then the leaders having the courage to ask for what they want and not what they think they can what they're going to be told that they can't have.
Well, one of the reasons I love the systems approach so much, it's not to, forego individual accountability or letting people off the hook, but it's you and me against the problem.
Right.
Not me against you. Not you did something wrong, I know better than you, or vice versa. It's we both agree this is what we want and this is the barrier. So how do you and I work together, whether it's individuals or people from different stakeholders, whatever, how do we work together to solve that? Right? Because now you're looking at it from an impersonal place. People's defensive,ness, Carmen was talking about that fight or flight response. It's not getting triggered as often when you're looking at it from this perspective of we're in this together.
That's great. That's great. And yeah, when you're elected officials, you don't feel like they're listening to you. It can certainly feel like people are ignoring you. And I think our media and comms panel, I think, do a great job explaining the power of telling stories, the power of exploring the data, and then coming together and talking about what's important to you, and then getting others involved. The advocacy film project that's being featured this week, for folks out there watching, tune in or just go right now to 6minutestolive.com and watch that 12-minute video. That is a tool you can use to educate others in your community that cardiac arrest survival rates are not the same here that they are in other places. And really asking, what are those survival rates? Hold your elected officials and your government accountable and your agencies accountable to report on those numbers, not to penalize people, but to have a commitment to improving them, because those numbers equal more lives saved. It's very clear. So you can head over to our virtual exhibitor hall and click on the Citizen CPR Resuscitation Academy, our resuscitation leadership booth. And there's a great interview there with a phenomenal panel, but also this is the 6 Minutes to Live short film that is really a great tool for helping educate the public.
I know we have to move on and wrap up, but I want to say one other thing is that, when I know you mentioned, Mark and Rob and Alexia's presentation, and one of the things I think it was Mark said tonight was so powerful was, if you're going to talk to a reporter, you have to know what's in it for them. Those weren't his words, but basically, like, how are you solving their problems, right? And so when we come from that mindset, then we frame our case differently. And I'm not saying that 100% of the time the other person's going to listen, but they're going to be more inclined to listen if you're solving a problem for them, right? If you're helping them to to rectify something that they're going to end up being happy about, right? So, I mean, it's not, there's no one size fits all answers, but this commitment to learning and growing and getting better and better and better. And as Bell talks today about reflecting versus deflecting, and that was a distinction I had never heard before. And I wrote that down, and that was a writer downer, Ronnie.
I did too when I heard that, and I wrote that phrase down. It's like, wow, where are we deflecting in life?
I know deflecting is when we say those people aren't listening to us, or that person did blah blah blah. But it's reflecting when you say, again, not to say that other people don't have things to be accountable for, but when we look and see what's my role in this, and how am I, how can I learn from this experience, and how can I grow to be better at communicating, or better at making things right, and that was another one of those moments where I was like, you go, as Bell.
Yeah, what a fantastic talk. What a great leader. I've watched him from stage, and he is very inspiring. And Lisa, I'm dropping the link to today's press release where we talked about this this great tool for
Great
community
idea.
that people can leverage. And the resources are here. The statistics are here. As Ann Dahl says from the Resuscitation Academy, it takes a system to save a victim. We know what works. The science is clear. What's missing in many communities is the will to act. And we've highlighted both Hillary Gates, Bob Davis, and Tom Bouthellet's presentation. And we've talked about a little bit of community education, the chain of survival here. So these are all great graphics that you can use and resources to share. And really, I mean, what's happening in your community's first 6 minutes of response. So yes, lots of statistics, lots of stories to share. National 911 report saying less than 48% of 911 answering centers actually are trained in emergency medical dispatch to provide telephone CPR instructions over the phone. So a lot of areas for improvement, a lot of what the Resuscitation Academy calls low-hanging fruit that communities can go after. So some great resources there. I hope you folks will share it with your local press outlets and let them run with it, because there are some great stories to be told.
And one other thing before we kind of wrap up is, I know that I'm pretty sure I didn't get all the way to the end of Mark and Rob's and Alexi's, but I'm pretty sure they all share their contact information. And so, and that's another really important use of associations, right? Is connect with other people. Somebody else has solved this problem that you're dealing with. I promise you, if it's not in this country, in some other country, somebody has solved this problem. So, if you're willing to solve it, if you really want to solve whatever the problem is, you feel like you're not getting listened to, it's time to really encourage other or to reach out to other people, organizations, associations, and find out how are they dealing with it. So leave it
Absolutely.
there for now.
The final talk that we haven't talked about today that was premiered was Charles Blankenship's talk, an interview that we did together. And he did a keynote during that, talking about achieving lasting change, and through stories of both patients' transformations and change, his personal journey and change. And the NEMSMA organization is such a great resource for any leader. So definitely check out nemsma.org if you're a leader, and join as an association member, because you'll have access to one of the best Google Groups email distribution lists that if you have a question, you will get answers back so quickly that day, with other examples of what's working in other areas of the country. Last but not least, just highlighting last call for tomorrow's Lunch and Learn with Isaac Sobel from Revenue EMS Found Money Experts. Isaac's really passionate about helping ambulance services recover money that was really owed to them for the work they've already done. So we are providing lunch thanks to our sponsors, and it's the first 100 people who register and attend tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, with Isaac. So Lisa, I think that wraps it up. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I always have one last thing. I want to encourage people to go to the to spend some time in the booths. I know I sound like a broken record, but Ninth Brain, Phase International, NEMSMA, NAMI HP, EMS One, Fire Rescue TV, and the two you just mentioned are Revenue EMS and Image Trend. They have made all of this possible. And so, if you could just show them some love. Go, you know, download some of their material that's relevant to you. Look and see, you know, what can you learn from them. That would be so great. And we have a booth too. And you could learn more about some of the trainings that we offer. But, you know, we could not do a free summit without our sponsors. So we thank them, we honor them, and we honor you for being here, and being willing to confront some of these really tough issues.
Absolutely. Folks, it's not too late. Sessions are up until for another 13 hours. You can still watch day number 2 sessions if you're a free pass holder. If you're interested in upgrading for lifetime access to this week's sessions and getting NEMSMA approved CME credits and additional bonuses, head on over to emsleadershipsummit.com/AAP for all access pass, and you can upgrade for a nominal fee. So Lisa, that wraps up day number 2. I want to thank everybody who tuned in, who watched us, to all the people from around the world, and including Duncan that's out there, that he shows up every time. It's always great. We appreciate his energy and enthusiasm from Australia and wherever he is in the world. So thanks for your questions, your participation, folks. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for tomorrow, day number 3's Daily Debrief.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a good night.